My name's Host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. I'd like to welcome you and yours to the Mildness Party. Tonight, we're going to spend some mild times together discussing mild things and both the pursuit of and demonstration of mildness. Hi, Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. I hope your Friday is mild. So, I've had an okay day. I've been largely feeling pretty bland. Hello there, Alex Holdfast. Currently bringing up the stream on the big screen. And here we go. So I'm not anticipating it's going to be a super long stream or anything. I just wanted to stop by the internet, say hello to people, maybe chat about I guess to some extent maybe the different kinds of challenges that life throws at you. How have you been keeping? I've been keeping okay. I actually feel quite tired right now. I'm not quite sure what inspired me to start the stream right now. When I did, I could easily enough, it seems, go to sleep. But we had to go into town today, run an errand. We went by the bootjack market on the way back from the pharmacy. Rachel was in, a bit of a mood today still, a little bit. But she seems to be feeling better now. And that sort of thing is always going to make me feel a little bit troubled because it's just another area of life to concern myself with, I guess. That's needing an attention. But I did have a nice conversation with Rachel today about tarot card reading. Which she did for me, which was past, future, present reading. The card in the present was the card for waiting for your ships to come in, which I thought was rather appropriate to the moment. I do feel that way somewhat. Life tends to throw a spanner in the works from time to time. My mom has just had a stroke, giving me a fright. That is indeed scary. I watched the new episode of Free Ren. Free Ren's Journey's End is the complete title of the show. And it's a super existentially rich show. There's a lot of kind of, I guess you'd say, intuitively resonant engagements with the subject of mortality and leaving a lasting legacy and stuff like that. It tends to make me feel Um, Della says, I'm still slightly worried that brain chemistry is not a static thing. It can change over time. I'm sure that's been brought up a bunch of times already, so I'm sorry I'm bringing it up again. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty cut and dry what's going on with that. She she doesn't do a good job of handling the dopamine crash. She's not prescribed the Adderall, and uh, it messes up her shit. And then it'll take a while afterwards to be fully recovered from it. It is the case also that uh, that my brain chemistry is also changing. I don't react in the same way to Adderall as I used to. It doesn't get me whacked out as much in general, and also the crash is much more brutal for me. It's also the case that Rachel, I think hadn't been taking her Prozac for a little while, but she has the last couple of days. So anyway, she seemed happy earlier when I was starting before I started to stream. I was watching the show and I just hear her. She's listening to something she's obviously finding very funny in the other room. It's always a pleasant sound to listen to her laughter. Feels all wholesome and appropriate and stuff. Well, we refilled all of her medications today. Not that she'd gone without any of them for any period of time. You're 54 now, and life seems more fragile than ever. I still feel blessed to have my mom and dad here. My mom's 70 and my dad's 82. Yeah, well, my parents were both 82 when they died. They had me on the older side, I guess, compared to how old they were when they had you, since we're the same age. If you're if you react like I did, then you will you'll be it'll be quite a shock to the system when they do pass. Am I racist? No. I'm fluidly transracial. I hope Louisiana becomes French again. Long live the Acadians. Well, that's not something you hear very often. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that to me before. I'm dreading my mom passing. She means a lot to me. Yeah, well, I sounds like you're doing a better job than I did of appreciating what time you have left with them. My mom got dementia some years before she died, and that kind of robs you of your engagement with your parent. Eat it, Bobek. Okay. Are you ready for some weekending, Dallas? Good question. I'm sorry to hear this, Alex. Strokes can be mild or severe. I hope it was minor and leads to an easy and speedy recovery. Yeah, well, mostly it felt super unfair. Like, I don't know. I felt like I lost her a long time before she died. Full blown stroke, yeah, that's what my grandmother died of, was a stroke. Ready for a blizzardy walloping on Sunday. Oh, that sounds fun. I wish we were getting some snow. It is chilly outside. It's not that cold. I don't even have socks on. Just flip flops and this light Pepsi jacket. But I am getting kind of chilly out here. And it's 47. Well, it feels a little warmer than that. I just kind of standing under the walkway, of course. If I were out under the empty sky, I would feel the coldness more. So, I went to the dentist on this past, Thursday, yesterday, I think. And this, I guess, hole in my, up here where it goes between my mouth and my sinus is still not closed all the way. That's kind of frustrating. Yeah, we do get snow here. We've gotten it every year heretofore that we've lived here, but not this year so far. We did technically get a little bit of snow this year, but it like fell before I got up in the morning and it was melted by that afternoon, just like a quarter inch of snow or something. Which is not, sometimes we get a lot of snow. The first year we moved here, we got like, well, we refer to it as Snowmageddon, but we got like 6 feet of snow and there was many feet of snow on the ground regularly for weeks and months and such. I've never experienced building a snow person. Oh, how forward thinking of you. Thank you for not saying snowman. We shouldn't assume that all snow people are men. Yeah, but that was like the most snow they'd gotten here, maybe ever, if not ever, in like 4 years or something. So that was a very unusual weather event. We were without power for like 2 weeks. I idiotically parked my car right here at the bottom of the driveway because I wasn't familiar with living in a place with snow. We're only at 4,000 feet, but we are above the snow line, which is um, generally, if it's in the winter and we have a storm, there's a good chance it's going to be snow. But this has been a warm fall and winter. I really like it when we do get snow. I find it very magical. There's nothing quite as satisfying as like in a cozy way of and going outside when it's snowing and everything's quiet like this. Snow absorbs all the sound. When you get the big snowflakes, they're like falling super slow from the sky. That's great. That's to attain maximal coziness. That's got to be going on outside. It's like everything is pure again when it snows. Yeah. Snow Schmo. We have our global sales force coming in for meetings this week. People from Singapore and Australia will get to see what 2 feet of snow looks like and negative wind chill. Hello, lifetime listener. Is it sauce time? I was once caught lacking on the streets of Oakland and was abruptly put in a spleef. We get snow in certain places, more in the South Island of New Zealand and lower parts of our North Island ski resorts and all. You are pretty far south, I guess. I guess the southern hemisphere has some kind of fake winter during the summertime. Hold on to your coconuts, everyone. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be like the spring break of weather events. So, tonight, together on this stream, we're celebrating the virtues of mildness. I think it's appropriate, therefore, that we're talking about the weather. Few things could be quite so mild as talking about the weather. I would like to go skiing, you know. You seem more relaxed. The stream last couple have been quite full on. Yeah, I'm not unrelaxed. I'm kind of in a limbo state of not in dopamine crash because I still have a little bit of Adderall that I'm taking, but not taking enough of it to thwack me out because of diminishing returns, among other reasons. And I feel fairly chill today also because well, I'm not having, you know, I'm not fighting with the wife or whatever. Although I wouldn't really call what's been going on with her the last couple of days as fighting. It's more like, you know, she's not had, she's been having kind of, she had a couple bad days, you know. And that's fine, that happens sometimes. I'm not, I'm not too stressed out about it. And I also try not to worry too much about the specific stuff that might come up during those times because I get from plenty of experience that I know the different faces of Rachel. I once saw metal tubes with a gas that transferred energy really well. If we were to use that on a large scale to connect equator to frigid zone, would this melt the ice caps or make for a more temperate zone? I mean, it really historically has not for Rachel since we got her on a red medication, but the Adderall throws an additional factor into the mix that I think is fairly disruptive. Leave Greenland alone? Okay, well, I'm not trying to bother Greenland personally. I'm not in favor of our weird imperialist designs on Greenland. Like, it's strange. Like, where did that come from? Just the bizarre mind of Donald Trump, I guess. He's like, see how big that thing on the map is? I was on a debate channel earlier where the caller debated the definition of energy. He was arguing with physicists. Well, what was the physicist's definition of energy? Matter times the speed of light squared. Obviously, there are energies at a variety of different wavelengths that are emanated from things, you know. For example, heat and radio waves are both forms of energy. Anarchy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think that's supposed to be insanity. Historically, that's what the quote is, but maybe your point is that it leads to anarchy. the ability to do work. Sure. Okay. That's fine. That's a fine uh, definition. I like how person focused it is. But I mean, it's not really person focused because things other than people can do work, I guess. But to define it in terms of its like convertibility, I guess. Does that include work that's not expedient? Well, sure. I mean, like for example, when they say capacity to do work, you think about things in terms of potential energy or chemical energy, right? Like if you carry a bowling ball to the top of a ladder, then it's got a certain amount of potential energy. You could, in theory, tap into that energy to move something or whatever else. I've been watching this YouTuber who does commentary on wild, ridiculous shows like 90 Day Fiance, so Catfish making sense. It's pretty funny. It sounded like it's pretty funny. I was enjoying listening to you laughing. When I was a young child who saw snow for the first time in real life and did not, and not on TV and cartoons, I did a front flip to the snow and figured out it wasn't soft and fluffy. Hmm. Yeah, well, it's understandable why you would have thought it was soft and fluffy based on the typical representation in cartoons and media and such. Today I introduced my wife to the Gong Show. She didn't think it was a real thing. Wow. It was a real thing. I have some memories of the Gong Show. But I was always into watching it because I love gongs. It had nothing to do with any of the other concept of the show. I just couldn't get enough of that hot gong music that they were playing. So I do feel like I have a defecation coming on. But I'm gonna let it brew for a little bit. I guess I'll sit down for a moment, pull a couple bong rips. Well, people want to argue about a lot of things. That's what it is in the Gong Show, yeah. The Gong Show is a show where if like somebody comes out and performs like a talent show act or something, and if it's good, they let them continue, and if it's bad, they hit the gong. Then that means you have to go away now. The one I just watched was on TCL. It was called My Husband's Not Gay. It's about Mormon gay men who can't be gay because of their religion. And so marry women who they find women who are good at ignoring the obvious or something. Hello, Acacia. New topic. Which types would survive a Black Mirror episode the longest? I mean, I haven't watched much Black Mirror, but I might call it a contemporary incarnation of the Twilight Zone. I don't know. I mean, I think, like how resilient you are, for example, is something that goes down as you get older, perhaps. So, um, seems like resilience is a necessary component in surviving a long time, but age is not type specific. It's crazy. Like one straight up checks out men in front of his wife. Like, damn, dude. Well, I mean, like I said, they must get with polar women who can ignore the salient factor or something. They're probably both in denial, I would guess. Or maybe the guy. I wonder if like that stops that guy from having sex with men.
But they're like not really in denial. Like they just straight up know that they're gay, but they have a term for it. It's called like SSA, and like I don't know what SSA. I forget what SSA stands for, but they like. The men like hang out together and talk about the men that they chased out.
Right.
And the boys like they like know if they like it's sort of sad because like they know that they're like married to these guys who are like attracted to men.
Uh-huh. So, like, what, do they just not talk about that or something?
Yeah, I don't think they do. Um, it's a good question.
I wonder if the men actually, like, don't have sex with men. Does the show
Well, I guess they wouldn't have tried. I think one of them might have been. Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, maybe they're saying, like, yes, I may be gay, but I'm going to live life as a straight person anyway.
Yeah, but they do. They check out other men. Uh, one of the couples tried to get their SSA, like meet gay friends, to go out with another girl, but thank God he said like at the end of the day like I don't like women basically.
I see.
Yeah, but one of them was in married for 20 years and didn't know until the 16th year together that he was gay. Like, oh my god.
Wow.
Yeah.
Watch out behind you.
Trouble.
Yeah, there's Katie there. You're single. We're lucky to have each other. We are lucky to have each other.
Yeah, we are.
Um, well, people go to great lengths to conform, I guess. Like it's like your whole community, your church, your family, or whatever. If acceptance by them is contingent on you playing this role, then people will say it's not worth it to not play that role. I can understand how brutal it would be to have to choose between, your family and stuff, and I guess your sexuality. I wonder what's up with that whole like these religions or communities of people who have this position on homosexuality. I'm not sure what they think they're accomplishing. There's an odd term called a lavender marriage. I only came across it recently. The idea is that the marriage is mutual convenience as one or both spouses have other preferences. Huh. Well, lavender marriage. I wonder what color my marriage is. Is it just regular colored? Are regular marriages just translucent? They don't have any particular color. Or maybe a lavender marriage is like pink on the one side would be gay, and then whatever's halfway between pink, I mean, whatever's on the other side, whatever lavender is halfway between pink and Roy G. Biv. Like, what color is an experienced country? I don't even know what that question means.
Are you gay?
My friend's not gay. That's the name of a show, huh? Oh, my husband's not gay. Oh, this is the show that Rachel's talking about, huh? My husband's not gay. Well, I don't particularly have any worries about this. Like, sometimes Rachel might watch a show about, like, oh, modeling, I don't know, in some way modeling a marriage or something. And I worry, I wonder if she's going to see, like, well, those people are having their marriage like this. And so shouldn't we be doing that too or something? But I'm not worried about that with this show. Also not worried that she might think she has this problem of having a gay husband. As opposed to new, you were saying that would be green. Oh, right. What color is an experienced color? A country, it's brown. It's green when it starts out, then it gets brown. Just like grass on a field. After you run on it a bunch, it turns to dirt. How long have you and Rachel been together now, Eric? Well, I would say that the answer is over 6 years, but not yet 7 years. Is that correct? Maybe Rachel will tell us if that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right.
Yeah. She says she thinks I'm right. Which is quite a long time, you know. Rachel and I have been together for quite a while now.
Yeah.
We're the new Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. That was longer for some reason. I mean, it's been an action-packed 6+ years. I'll tell you that. All kinds of stuff has happened, and you know, here we are today. I still kind of feel like, you know, like in the period of time after a crazy night of partying all through whatever, and you kind of try to piece back together everything that happened. I kind of feel like that is true for me and Rachel as well, obviously. But you know, life was so different when we first got together than it is now in so many substantial ways that it kind of feels like a big whirlwind. And at the same time, there have been plenty of periods of time that have been very slow and not much of anything has changed, etc. I believe I may have had a you know who sighting earlier today. I had a comment left on one of my videos insisting host Eric is an ESFJ, deleted before I could respond. Modus operandi. Well, haters gonna hate, I guess. I actually don't know exactly who that would be, but I have a guess of who you might be referring to. ESFJ. That's just a strange idea. It seems very strange to me because I've known some ESFJs. I was married to one, and they're really, even though both types have FE and NE as absolute values, they're very different. Quite strikingly different types. Soon we'll have the new show. My husband is not an ESFJ. I'm catching up. I don't mind the slow times. I prefer it. I'm catching up. Yeah, fair enough. I don't necessarily mind the slow times either. It's just like what I'm saying is there's been so much change and in on like every vector for us that even when we're in the slow times, I feel like you say, like I'm still processing all the changes and stuff. I guess I feel more far along that process now than I used to, for sure. I feel at the moment somewhat constrained by externals, but probably that feeling is a little bigger than the actuality of it. There's plenty of things I could do right now that are not have nothing to do with the car, but the car is nevertheless hanging over me as this thing that needs to be. And then you see the husband's Facebook profile, and the post ends with #blessed. Am I happy? Uh, well, like at the moment, I wouldn't say have particularly positive feelings, um, but that's just in the moment. Like I'm coming to the end of a bottle of Adderall. I'm pretty tapped out and stuff emotionally. I wouldn't say I'm unhappy right now either. If you mean am I happy in general, I I'm as happy as I can be uh, right now. There's nothing wrong with anything that's going on in the world, in my life, or whatever to make me unhappy. But it is the case that I'm not the cheerful, enthusiastic, consistently optimistic or carefree, you know, fun fun bag that I used to be. I I'm I'm just a different person. Each day is a golden opportunity to live and to laugh and to love. Right. Well, thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it. Like, am I am I happy is a weird question in general because, like, the most accurate answer is it depends on the day, my mood, various things. But people generally mean it in a overarching sense, like, are you happy in life? Well, I'm not, I'm not happy with my own lack of productivity slash inaction on things that are of significant practical concern. That makes me unhappy with myself. And the problem with that is there's nothing conceivably good that comes from talking about it. Just do the things. It's a good FJ thing to have, I think. Positivity reminder. I have weed and meth and stool softener. What kind of stream are you doing tonight? You mean, what does it go best with? Maybe all three. It's easiest for me to understand what like happy Eric looks like by thinking about times before when I was better able to play productively, make things, what have you. Thanks, I'm the rare Andean flamingo. Um, so yeah, by comparison, my current manifestation of self feels dampened down somewhat from what historically has been my more natural expression of self. And, I'm not exactly sure why. Sure, there are, I guess I would say, I think it has as much to do with increased responsibility and concerns. With age comes reflection. Yeah. With age comes reflection and a greater sense of responsibility for certain kinds of things as well. And when you get into your 50s, there's questions of your health, your long term, general longevity, mortality, stuff like that. Well, they start to become a little bit more, they come into clearer resolve as you get a little bit older, or demand more attention, I guess you could say. I would love to be able to determine how much attention to give a given thing. In other words, okay, I get that I'm going to have to pay attention to this anxiety inducing thing some, but I want to experience yeah amount of attention at it, the amount necessary for me to have the full human experience or something. But equivalently, once I've learned a lesson from a bad memory that I experienced a lot of regret about or something, well, okay, once I've learned everything there's to learn from it, can we just not revisit it very often after that? That'd be fine, thank you. And you're the Fool card too. It's the most frequent personal tarot card. Really? Well, I definitely feel like the Fool plenty. I feel like a pampered, unprepared kid thrust out into the wilderness somewhat. INTP awkward reach around head scratch could be on the XNTP bingo card. That is typical of NTPs. The filer guy, he sent me another email, this time containing some kind of document that, oh, is that from you, Acacia? We meant to ask about that. We were wondering, because it didn't say who it was from, but it sounds like maybe, am I correct to say, Acacia, that you sent Rachel those tarot cards? There you go, Rachel. We now have an answer to that mystery. I got Korean enemies, says G.I. Eusebilia. Are tarot cards a good guide? I've always wondered that. Well, it's a way of making sense of things in your life that don't parse out logically particularly, but have holistic kinds of engagements with meaning. So, when Rachel told me that she pulled Sun in the past and Three of Wands in the present and King of Wands in the future for me, I naturally am going to understand that the past represents some more distant past where I was more like the sun card, like a naked baby riding on a horse in the sunlight. And that at the moment I feel like I'm waiting for my ships to come in, which I certainly am feeling that way. Like especially regarding the car, the eventual completion of the dental stuff, etc. There's a lot of sense of, if not waiting for my ship to come in, then at least waiting for a ship to come and then take me over to this other thing over here where I can be a little bit more productive. So I'm going to find linkages myself to whatever cards are in my tarot pool. And some people might say that accordingly, it's somehow less meaningful because you're providing the linkages, but I don't think that makes it less meaningful. I think it just makes it an intuitive rather than a parsably deconstructible tool. What is this skull? This skull? It's my head. It's my head. It has parts on it like my eyes, my nose, my mouth. It's got my brain inside of it. Hi, Nog. They are just cards, but they're also cards that have each which has an archetype that conveys a set of information that's linked to a few different ideas rather than just say something, say for example 12 equals 6 times 2 or 1 times 12 or what have you, but it doesn't convey any concept beyond its exact meaning of 12ness inherently. But you can make meaning out of it, like numerology does that stuff. Cards allow us to key into the symbolism found in the cards. Our personal unconscious remembers the hits, what resonates, what message comes across. Suggest here we might focus. I can figure it out when Rachel shows us the cards. In the past position, the sun suggests a time of joy, clarity, success, and confidence. The shape of the past reflects past happiness, openness, or a period of growth that brought warmth, truth, and renewed energy. Right, so Rachel just read the description of this, how one might interpret the sun in the position of the past. I would point out that there's a clear distinction between the archetype of it being your day and the spotlight and the sunshine, what have you, and feeling like everything's coming up roses and all the stuff that indicated there, versus waiting for your ships to come in, which is it's kind of like it represents an ordinal step on a ordinated path, right? Like first your ships have to get there, then you have to, I guess, get on them and go someplace, and then etc. So archetypally, tarot cards represent a journey. Simon Bellamondo, hello, how are you? I hope you're doing fine this evening. I'm doing A-OK. My head has a hole that's actually pretty effective at processing mashed potatoes. Oh, really? I assume you're talking about your ear? I just read it. I was a little late to the mashed potato party, but no, once I read it internally, I read it out loud. I have a better understanding now, thanks. So you can play with chips and gamble with them. I'm interested in them. So you can't, like, play with chips and gamble with them. I'm interested in them. I am on the West Coast, yes. Oh, yeah, it's not those kind of cards. I see. I forgot even what I was responding to. I'm in California. We are, Rachel and I. Rachel, who's here in the chat, is Rachie116, is my wife. Do you do NLP? I don't know what that means. Nope. I doubt it. I'm not sure what that is. Might be negative laughter perception. I would not say that I'm on the west side. No, I would say I'm on the west coast. Probably what my attention does when an ESFP says something. I would say Eric is definitely not the NLP type. If anything, he might rip a joke about it. Well, what is that even? Me and Nog got in contact and got on a game of FIFA. He beat me on no rule 6 Real Madrid. 6 Real Madrid, 4 Reading. Neuro-linguistic programming. So I mean, like, I'm strong, I'm confident, and I'm wonderful. You just repeat that while you're looking in the mirror. I could probably use a certain amount of that. It's like if I wanted to take some sort of concrete action to deal with my negative self-talk, I could force myself to do that after my negative self-talk. And it'd be just so embarrassing that maybe I would just stop doing the negative self-talk to avoid it. If you want someone to get an idea in their head, you might say certain words in your sentences with a slower, deeper tone. Listen. I want you to listen to me. You're not hearing me. Look, I'm just saying that I expect my dog to obey. Like that. Referred to as the left coast. Well, no, I don't live in a particularly liberal county myself. It's kind of a diverse county, I guess, but I'd say largely libertarian slash, Republican, more than Democrats around here, probably. Some of these names are great. Dr. Red Taco is so cool. I'm assuming he's talking about a Doritos Loco Taco. The spicy one. Is that I wish you talk to trouble? Eat your food. What was the year 1989 mean to me? That's when I graduated from high school. Started college. I considered ENFJ for Tony Robbins, but he has so much FI. Misery says that's the year I was born. Steve was 17. I was 18 by the end of, I was 17 at the beginning of 1989. I don't think Tony Robbins is an ENTP. That seems very unlikely to me. Would I rather fight 5 duck-sized bears or 1 bear-sized duck? The 5 duck-sized bears, I think. If they're just the size of a duck, then that's fine. They'd be like adorable little Ewoks. I'd capture them all and enslave them. Is that Myers-Briggs? Well, yeah, that's where the letters like that come from, is Myers-Briggs. But yeah, it's referring to cognitive function, Jungian cognitive function based personality types. I went to Arcadia. And Jordan Peterson and Napoleon Hill. I've never heard of Napoleon Hill. McKeesport High School for you? Well, congratulations, Steve, on your high school diploma. I wish you all the best as you move into the world newly found as an adult. Tommy Dobinson is a Muslim, by the way. Who's Tommy Dobinson? Never heard of that either. Do I believe in the law of attraction? No. I believe in the much more straightforward law of not doing. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen. Fuck being an adult. Can I go back? Who wants to join Proposition Fuck being an adult, let's go back? Everybody does. The law of attraction, the problem with it is it says that basically your attitude dictates your reality, and it's just not accurate at all. How can FI polar individuals handle loss in the family better, i.e. someone in particular who raised you? I mean, I have no idea except say that they need to do a better job before the loss occurs so that when it happens, they don't feel like I did afterwards. I think you're onto something here, Anna 05, except what if my parents also don't want to be adults anymore? Well, I don't know what to tell you about that. I never had that problem. My parents never seemed to have any problem being adults. Managed to graduate, start cooking as a saute chef. Beginning of life, really. Go back to the second semester, senior year of college. So IQ is independent of MBTI, right? then what's up with the stereotypes of some of the types? Like, can an INTJ be a moron? Well, I don't know if IQ is independent of personality type. Like, it might be the case that um, that there's a correlation between some personality types and scoring high on IQ tests. Or it might also be the case that, you get some sort of range for each type and it goes like this, something. One could conclude various things about it looking at the data if you could type people correctly and also link it to test scores on actual IQ tests. But even then, the problem would be that IQ tests don't really mean anything and that they're a compilation score of several discrete particular kinds of attention, and you couldn't really call it comprehensive of intelligence any in any good definition of intelligence, because it doesn't test for it doesn't evaluate people's ability to be intelligent in the put function. Like, for example, an ISTP is probably not going to find instances where their polar NE negatively impacts them on an IQ test, but it is going to negatively impact how intelligent they are from other people's perceptions in a variety of contexts. Hello there, Ace. How are you? I hope you're doing well, and that today has been everything you ever dreamed it would be. Ace, I hope you had some kind of perfect dream day where you woke up in a bed of rose petals and, were fed grapes while somebody brushed your teeth for you. Would that be a good way to start the day? Yeah, Missy. I didn't get to walk your graduation because I didn't like getting naked in front of other men for swim class. Well, I guess that means you didn't complete your PE class, to the school's satisfaction. That was back in the day when schools didn't. It was more, especially a gym class and stuff, was more of the military tradition than it is currently. Parents were not happy about not walking. Right. Yeah, parents like those kind of ceremonies, I guess. Our cat's at the vet. Bladder issue, feline, idiopathic cystitis. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear your cat's not well. My cat is right here. And you know what she is? A little angel. Aren't you? Yes. Daddy knows. And Daddy loves. I really don't particularly like her sitting right here. No, I don't think it's strange for you to have whatever perspectives you have on that. I think it's strange that back in the olden days when you and I went to school that nobody thought like nobody thought it was legitimate to object. You're a good kitty. Yes, you are. A special kitty. A wonderful kitty. All right, let's go outside and take another little bit of a snack break. Okay, cool, Cameron. Thank you. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it. I've been in contact with Delilah, but she I was waiting for further updates. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And that's good progress. I'm happy to hear that. Felt old today. Sat down in the park. Felt like the grass was growing well. It's 25 years old. Does it get better in your 30s? I mean, you'll find, I think, Nico Vlad, if you're anything like me, that you'll have phases of your life that are better and worse, and you just gotta kind of ride the roller coaster. Good stuff happens, bad stuff happens. Sometimes you make some good decisions, do some cool stuff, and sometimes you make some bad decisions, regret them. Sometimes you fail to make decisions at all, and probably regret that as well. I look like the Bong Chan. I don't know who the Bong Chan is. But I will get my glasses so I can read the chat on this side. Basically, has your opinion changed over the years? Or what are your thoughts on Bruce Springsteen? Are both those Bruce Springsteen songs? I'm not a fan of Bruce Springsteen at all. I wasn't back in the day either. Although I don't necessarily hate everything he's made. But if the second song you're talking about is, oh no, I was thinking, I don't know what the second song is. If I lose connection, it's because of Snowmageddon 2. Snowmageddon, tired of this weather. Bang Chan is the stage name of Christopher Kahan Bang, a South Korean Australian singer, rapper, songwriter, and record producer. He leads the K-pop boy band Stray Kids. Thanks. Life is a track. Just need to find your path, I think. Well, yeah, you may need to find a path, like the path for you, or you may need to find a series of paths or a succession of different paths, maybe even simultaneously more than one. Depends on where you find your absolute value. What actually gives you a lot of satisfaction and is important to you. Makes you feel complete or good about yourself or something. Have you met an enlightened person? Or an it factor? I'm not a big believer in enlightenment. Even if I were to encounter somebody who maintained this perfect Zen demeanor and, sort of sparkle-eyed, positive pleasantness in the momentness or what have you, I don't see any reason to think that's inherently preferable to other states of being. And I don't think it's consistent with the human experience to not be attached to things, for example, to somehow transcend loss, grief, is not a good way to be human. Alex says, I just can't imagine what we're thinking back then to think those two songs were even anywhere near okay. I don't even know what they're even about. What's your thoughts on life path numbers? I mean, I'm not a big believer in numerology or those kinds of things in general, but my wife's into it. I don't have anything against it or anything. Let's see. Bruce Springsteen is interesting is that his music centers on themes of social class, America's working class struggles, dreams, and dignities. Well, he's one of those kind of. He's got to be a boomer, and he's talking about, a. When he's talking about that stuff, he's talking about his own past. He's not even talking about the present in the same way that Billy Joel is. Well, it's true, Steve, that um, in songs that are like a guy singing to a girl, that the male singer is likely to refer to that their significant other or what have you, their romantic interest, as woman, baby, child, girl, little girl. All those things are commonly used to mean, in general, you know, romantic interest woman. And I don't think they should be taken literally to mean little girl. It and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with being a boomer. But my point is that his his themes of social class, working class struggles, dreams, dignities, whatnot, were were already, like, he was lamenting something that was already gone when he was, by the time those songs became popular. Writing about economic hardships, industrial job loss, desire for escape. Yeah, I mean, I guess there was resonance with that at the time he made those songs, but it seems like underlying his stuff was more lamentation about the post-war boom America than it was about the realities of the moment. What's the scariest type of intelligence that you have seen in a person? The scariest type of intelligence? I mean, I don't view any type of intelligence as scary. I view some kinds of demonstrated habits of language usage, for example, scary. If somebody's making threats or trying to, relentlessly trying to slander me or something, I might see an actual physical threat is scary, like somebody marching towards me like they're going to hit me or something. But the idea that a certain kind of intelligence is scary, I'm not sure what that would even look like. It's conceivable. Yeah, I do think that daddy probably meant husband, or, male in a heterosexual relationship. You hear that fairly often as well. I could be wrong, Steve. I mean, maybe you're right about that stuff. There was a lot of weird shit like that that seemed to be just not even nobody blinked or looked twice at, because it just seemed to be accepted or whatever back then. So it's possible. If it is that way, I'd rather not even think about it. You know, human depravity is not a pleasant thing to muse about in general. I'd like to, I'd like the world to be good and wholesome, moral, just, argumentationally clean and true. back the K was kid. So 16-year-olds like an adult, but now being older. Or back then, I don't know what you're saying. Does anybody here know about, what does that say? Know about GD&T? And fantasizing adult romance is always showing up in different ways, even the word boyfriend or girlfriend that people use well into adulthood. Babe, baby, bae, daddy, mama. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're saying that there are like facts and evidence with Bruce Springsteen that would be consistent with interpreting it that way, then that's a different story. But generally, I don't think we should take those things literally. Very narrative. What's very narrative? You're so very narrative. I just think the liberal mindset might be a little over the line. Well, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by a mindset being over the line. Properly understood, you've got people who are articulating well-informed, defensible positions about public policy, and you have people who aren't. The people who aren't include people who talk about those with a liberal mindset, and also those who talk about people with a conservative mindset. That is not a good way to engage with things politically. It's just a process of defining oneself with or against a given group. I think there's an assumption that there's some underlying difference in people that's represented by what team they're on. But I think instead it's representative of a similarity among them all. This either unwillingness, inability to, or something like that, to engage politically in nuanced adult ways. That's a good I should make an energy drink called Fahrenheit and make it to be similar to Celsius but not taste like shit. That is good Guilt. Its tagline could be, "What are we, Europeans?" Or consistent attachment to a certain direction for policies. Well, I mean, no, it's not a good way to understand any specific policy question. Is to think that you can know a general direction in which things should go. I mean, like for example, on a question of taxation specifically, you can say, well, we should have either a unchanging tax protocols or have lower taxes going forward. But in the general sense, like, should we move progressively or conservatively? No, you can't have any kind of general direction like that and meaningfully engage in specific policies. The thing is, your job with politics in general, everyone's job with politics in general, is not to be consistent, like in some sort of, be consistently progressive or something. Your goal is for your framings to be consistent among specific policy matters, but indeterminate, but different on every case level. So it is a good idea to have framings that are consistent in the sense of like we should answer questions of legitimacy first. You might say that's a meta frame, but regardless, yeah, politics. Politics gives me a case of the bummers. Well, there is an unknown cause of autism, but it is believed to be genetics. Well, I think that 95% of the people who are diagnosed as autistic are actually just normal people, and that there are actually autistic people, right? Actual autistic people have mental retardation as part of their autism. People with bad extroverted feeling that do not qualify as the same thing as autistic. And no, there's not a spectrum of autism, because people who have actual autism, one symptom of that is a disconnect with extroverted feeling. That doesn't mean that everybody who's got weak extroverted feeling is to some degree autistic. It's ridiculous, horrible reasoning. Here's my thoughts. If that happens, boasting about it in a public way or flaunting it seems to be the liberal way. I don't think so at all. I don't think that people, a given person's, how they present their relationship in the world is going to have anything to do with their political persuasion. Why do autistic people have to be retarded to be autistic? Well, because in real autism, you've got a problem with your relationship with sensory data. So it's not just extroverted feeling stuff, right? It's like you'll see autistic people going like this. It's called self-stimulation or stimming. And you'll encounter lots of kind of OCD-ish behaviors like being very repetitive, talking about the same thing all the time. And all of those things, they represent like damage to the cognition part of things. So it's like if you look at Down syndrome versus regular people, right? It's hard to say why should it have to be the case for somebody to have mental retardation to have Down syndrome. Well, because that's one of the symptoms that goes with it all the time. Well, that person, couldn't they be a little bit Down syndrome and they're not mentally retarded? Well, it just doesn't seem to work that way, Same thing with autism. The thing is, I worked in special ed and dealt with actual autistic kids who needed to be in special ed. And so, to me, it's quite clear the difference between the sensory-based relationship with extroverted feeling that autistic people have and just having a bad relationship with extroverted feeling. The thing is, you do have some high functioning autistic people who blur the lines, more so than you would with Down syndrome. There's no doubt about that. But um, that doesn't mean that the vast majority of autistic people who are diagnosed as autistic actually have autism, because, like I'm saying, the the weakness with extroverted feeling comes with other stuff with autism consistently. And as to exactly why, well, it's just observationally so from my perspective, I guess. I guess I can't really justify the, the claim. It's predicated on my intuitive perception of the difference between people who get diagnosed as autistic that I talk to on a regular. And someone will say, "Well, I'm going to type in session. Well, I have been diagnosed as autistic," and there's just a perfectly regular person, you know. Well, I mean, I guess that's the question at hand, Fly Guy. It's fair to say that Down syndrome is inherently more binary than autism, because with Down syndrome, we've isolated the genetic defect that results in it, or what have you. Whereas with autism, we have not determined such a thing. So, from a empirical perspective, yes, it's more binary with Down syndrome. And yet, it's also the case that you get varying severities of Down syndrome. So, but just because we haven't found the genetic defect for autism doesn't mean there isn't one or something equivalent. I feel like I stem when I'm overwhelmed in public. Example, people talking to me in public when I don't want to be talked to. Crowded places. INFJ here. Well, what does that stemming look like? No, there's definitely varying degrees of severity. Some of them are mainstreamable. None of them are gonna pass as normal, but some of them are like quirky from that show, and some of them are like gotta change their diapers and stuff. So I guess I can't really defend the claim that autism doesn't occur on a spectrum, and that there aren't some people who don't qualify as mentally retarded who do qualify as autistic. I think that may be the case, but I still think the vast majority of people who are diagnosed as autistic in the status quo are just there's nothing. It's like if most of the people who get diagnosed as autistic are autistic, then anybody could be diagnosed as autistic. It's like I mean, I find that very unlikely, Dr. Red Taco, to believe that some autism is caused by trauma. And if in fact we're starting to get into this idea that autism might be caused by environmental factors or something, well, it's not. Like in the early in the early years of autism, when it started being diagnosed and such, back in the 50s, maybe it was before that, I'm not sure, but there was a belief that autistic kids were turned out that way because their mother didn't love them properly. And it resulted in, God knows how much trauma for those families. But eventually that view became challenged, as there were many examples of parents who'd have, three kids, two of them were perfectly healthy, normal, happy kids, and one of whom was was rocking back and forth and going like this and such. And like I remember reading something from one of the mothers saying, "I knew I could not have loved my third child that much worse than my first two children." Well, BPD is definitely caused by childhood trauma, but autism is not. I think you got a point. Tribulation/great stress can activate the autism side of the brain. I don't think that the trauma can anymore cause autism than it can cause Down syndrome. You you may be able to traumatize somebody into certain autistic like behaviors, but that's my point in this whole thing is that like I can sometimes be pretty retarded. That doesn't mean I'm on the Down syndrome spectrum. Like there's an autistic kid, I don't know, he's probably like 17, 16 or something, that we saw in the supermarket today. I've seen him in there before. And he's he's high functioning, but he's obviously actually autistic. Imagine if we diagnosed Down syndrome based on behavior. Exactly. That's really my whole point about this is people are being very cavalier with with this diagnosis, even though actual autistic people have actual disabilities, cognitive disabilities that that kid will never not need the custodianship of his mom, even though he can talk to her and stuff. He talks in like this autistic-y voice and etc. Um, well, the thing is, like we do know that there's a population of people that we called autistic before we started spreading the term out, right? And that population of people have significant cognitive disabilities and varying degrees of ability to fit into normal society at all. Now, it may be the case that autism includes some individuals who are so high functioning in their autism that in fact they don't test as mentally retarded. But the idea that it doesn't have an actual defined border around it that makes it representative of an actual thing that's wrong, but instead is like, oh well, the reason your skin is redder is because you got too much sun, and to think that it, it's kind of like if you've got people who are born being too red and like sunburned or something, and they have some kind of disability, and then discovering that other people in the world get sunburned sometimes, and say, well, see, this redness disability that these people have is actually just part of a spectrum of rednesses, but it's not because uh, there's not a single thing else that I can think of in the entire world that works like that, where you've got a population of people who have like permanent disabilities caused by something pre-birth or around birth. There may not be consensus that autism people are born autistic, but there's very good reason to think that they are. So it's like I can't think of anything else that's significant enough a problem to cause people to be retarded and not be able to function in society, but that more mild versions of it just make you say socially awkward or something. I just I I just don't buy it. Things need to have their own defined set limits, right? in general, it's a problem that we have in the world is people don't get the idea that, like, that just because we have within a population of ducks differentiation among different ducks doesn't mean that um, goose is just an extreme form of a duck variant. You know, it just doesn't work that way. Or that all things that fly have a little bit of duck disorder. When one point on a spectrum is so far different from another that doesn't even resemble the expression of the condition manifest, it calls into question whether to conclude the same diagnosis. Or like, yeah, it seems I don't really have a compellingly good argument to win the point that there's no reason why it couldn't be like lead poisoning or something where you get a little teeny bit of lead in you and it doesn't really do anything. And the more you take, the worse it gets. And you might look at a population of people who are very sick with lead poisoning and say, well, this person over here has got very, very mild symptoms of it, is on the lead poisoning spectrum. And that would be correct, right? So there's no reason to assume this couldn't be like that inherently. But um, if it is like that, then it'd be hard to explain it in genetic terms, And maybe it's not genetic thing. Who knows? I don't know about autism. What does this have to do with levels of neuroticism? I think that neuroticism is something that varies during different times of your life. People, purportedly personality stuff is stuff that remains the same about you throughout your life. But Big Five has neuroticism as a personality trait. And in my opinion, neuroticism changes throughout your life. You can get more or less neurotic depending on environmental triggers and or I guess stimuli. Like if you're getting a lot of if you're being forced to walk on eggshells a lot by different people, circumstances, what have you, you're going to end up somewhat more neurotic. Okay, well, if Big Five says all your traits can change, then they've decided to do away with an operationalized definition of personality in exchange for undefined garbage. Right, parents push for autistic diagnoses to qualify for treatment and assistance. It's also the case that you get people like my former client, or still client, I guess, Chloe, who got some kind of a diagnosis to get her extra time on tests and stuff, even though she's already at like the top of her class. So who knows? They had me placed on the spectrum growing up. My IQ was normal. Verbal reasoning and fluid reasoning were high. Only lower scores was working memory. I was very social, if anything, hypersocial. And they diagnosed you as on the spectrum. So what is the problem? You have to start somewhere. You have to find out autism exists before you identify it as many different disorders. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, it, I'm not claiming to to win the argument here about autism, I get that I can't I don't have the determinate argument in my favor. I think it's hard to say without being able to pinpoint a specific cause and highlight the absence of that in people diagnosed as autistic. We won't be able to really resolve the question. Do you think life itself is so within some limited norms, and even we don't know why we are here but just exist? I get the part we have to do job, etc., but that's also part of norms. I mean, it is true that throughout life we'll link our experiences, actions, words, etc., back against norms that we've either probably internalized to see how whether we feel achievement or not. But I don't think that um, that comprises like a comprehensive description of life. There's a statistic I read recently that something like 40% of students at Stanford get special accommodations. Ridiculous. Since this is a popular topic, Eric, maybe you could review the video and make a short review. What video? I think retarded autistic people relate better to autistic geniuses better than they relate to normal people. I mean, I don't think retarded autistic people relate to other people barely at all. The idea of neurotypical is already troublesome and hard to pin down, so it's not even like there's an easy control to compare oneself against, especially when most people think about it behaviorally. True, one parent got legal assistance to say their child was not MR, but autistic despite IQ tests and others. What MBTI type is most likely to want to be a different type than they actually are? I think that's fairly common in ESFP and ISFJ. Probably the two types where I've maybe seen that most. The main question is the cases of people with autism has increased rapidly in the last 10 to 15 years. What's the reason behind that? Well, the widespread adoption of a kind of checklist standard diagnostic tool rather than anything more meaningful. I don't at all, and I feel like it might even be a different disorder entirely or something. I mean, I think what's happening in general with a lot of psychology stuff is that psychologists of different personality types see somebody who has maybe their tool function as a polar and pathologize them. So, like, if I were in psychology and didn't know about cognitive functions and was doing what everybody seems to be doing, I would say I'd pathologize ESFPs, perhaps ENFPs too, as having some kind of um, rationality deficiency disorder or definitional, like, like definitional ambiguity preference disorder or something. So the point is, MR is mentally retarded. The only thing that has anything to do with the chemicals in food and other variables. What, autism? I don't think so. If it, like, keeping in mind that I worked with populations of autistic people who, by and large, were less high functioning. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in special ed classes if they were more high functioning. If they were high functioning enough. So, So the thing is, it's not inconceivable, but most parents report symptoms of autism very early on. So it's like, and you've got plenty of examples across decades of one member of a family that's got 5 kids being autistic and be the middle kid. Like, how do you explain that with food additives? You might say, well, they were all a little autistic or something, I guess. But the point is, food additives and such have changed over the years. Different ones coming into vogue and being removed and so forth. So you'd have to find some particular additives that have been consistently in food since the, I don't know, 40s, 30s, 50s. I mean, probably we've had autistic people a lot longer than that, but I'm not sure it was a distinct diagnosis. I doubt it's the other way around where verbal autists would prefer hanging out with nonverbals. They take neurotypical people over that. I mean, it may be the case that autistic people are going to have less negative reaction to people who engage them less, right? So it might be the case that people with lower FE will cross the autistic person's boundaries less, and therefore they can be measurably said to prefer the company of that party, but that doesn't indicate that there's some commonality between the two parties, except that there's a commonality among the people who are declared to be, on the spectrum autistic. There's a correlation there between their low FE and their lack of initiating conversation and stuff like that. To be honest, it's still rare, and if there's more of a presence, perhaps they would just integrate into regular classrooms more. I mean, the thing is, I worked entirely with populations of students who were too retarded to be in the regular classrooms, at least for most of the day. And so it seems like, for example, when you're talking about the labels of special ed or retarded versus gifted, the population of retarded people actually have something wrong with them, whereas the population of gifted people don't actually have something right with them. They're just there on a spectrum of being better or worse at certain things that schools value, right? Whereas retarded people are not part of that spectrum of normalcy. They're on the other side of a clear, bright line between normal people who don't have anything wrong with them and retarded people who do have something wrong with them. I've heard one of the things that make autism difficult is to have a low plasticity. It can be rigid or don't like change. I wonder if there's a correlation with autism and SI. I mean, presumably autistic people it might be possible to describe their disability in terms of cognitive function deficits, but I would say that cognitive functions explains a person's personality, provided they don't have something bright line wrong with them. In which case, I don't know. I don't know how, like, I'm sure to some extent there's a linkage between deficits in certain functions and certain disabilities, but I don't know how you go about articulating those things in those terms. I think by and large, though, we make a mistake in thinking that stuff like autism, like substantial differences like that, though they're somehow environmental, they they almost never are. Sure, you can talk about BPD being environmental caused by abuse, and there's a variety of kind of behavioral problems people might demonstrate that are linked to environmental stuff, but assuming a relatively healthy upbringing, you get um, you get a population of people that doesn't display BPD, for example. When was I working as a special ed teacher? Well, shortly after I graduated from college, probably started working as that, and sometime around 96 or 97, something like that. I mean, I worked as a substitute somewhat before, right after college. I knew people with just plain ADHD placed into study skills classes growing up. Most have grown up to be relatively normal. I had some trouble focusing early on. Well, ADHD is another one of those things that's it's describing a function stack that doesn't complement, I guess. It doesn't go well with a lot of societal expectations, particularly in school or workplace, where people are expected by and large to sit in one place, do a certain thing for an extended period of time, and not and do that regardless of whether they find it boring. Yeah. Radish Raven is an INFP. She's recently been producing content about autism. I don't know if she's autistic, but I believe she's an INFP. Well, like, you got all kinds of people out there making content about what it's like being autistic. And what are they really talking about? What it's like being me. And how I identify with these various things they say about autism. But mostly what it's like being me. And so then somebody else goes, "Oh, they just told me maybe I'm autistic. Let me watch this video." And here's some lady talking about how her autism makes her incredibly intuitive about people, and she can basically like see the future. And they go, "Huh? It's because of the stereotype that we're all savant sleeper geniuses or something." It is true that people with bad FE, well, that is gonna mean they've got, probably that the T's are above the F. So like INTPs have bad FE, but INTJs have even worse FE, and those are generally considered very smart types, or likely to score high on an IQ test, I guess I would say. Whereas ISTJs, they also have bad FE. They're less likely to score high on an IQ test. My guess, just based off of vibe, is that NE and SE dominant types are most likely to fit into the ADHD uh, diagnosis. And SE and NE tool types coming in second. I think you're absolutely right on the money. Yo, that's what I think about that. I think you should get a special prize in the mail, a, a copper medal that says winner on it. The thing is, it ADHD makes for a good example going the other direction, too. There are a variety of things like Fragile X syndrome, for example. They might say that even about people with Down syndrome or other varieties of disabilities that lead to cognitive issues. Well, they'll often say one of the symptoms of that is ADHD. But nobody says that I'm on the Fragile X syndrome spectrum. So that's kind of important to remember too, that we could say the same thing about ADHD if we could find something equivalent on the other side there, but that it doesn't mean anything. That linkage is it's misleading. Types that have autism, if you just read basic descriptions of their function weaknesses, INFP, INTP, INTJ, ISTJ, ISFP, was involved in education with kids with learning disabilities. There was the other side that dealt with kids with emotional disabilities. Together, they all qualified as autism. Okay. Emotional disabilities, huh? Is that what's wrong with me? I have an emotional disability? Hmm. That's why today ask your doctor about Imotol. Do you have an emotional disability? Are you not feeling strongly enough? Are you unable to put yourself in other people's shoes? You're not alone. It's not your fault. You need Imotol. Side effects of Imotol may include uncontrollable weeping, maniacal hysterical laughter, insatiable curiosity, unimaginable fear, experiential disability. Right, well, and I've got some kind of executive function disorder, whereby instead of doing things, I do this. Just like a junkie, back to it again. Just, oh, give me more of that hot live stream action. INFJ equals undiagnosed autism, huh? Yeah. When you start getting people out there in the world saying they're both INFJ and autistic, then you know the world's gone completely insane. You're rhythmically challenged? That's one of your disabilities? Well, I'm a fake deaf person. Being a fake deaf person is one of my disabilities. And it is quite a disability because people really will give you dirty looks when you tell them that you're a fake deaf person. I don't know what the big deal is. You're not autistic and you are an INFJ. Well, it's good to know that you're not autistic. I got my fingers crossed for you that you're also not Down syndrome. But if you are, I don't mean to invalidate your remarkably lucid engagement. Let's see. I'm tired of all of these self-diagnosed normal people. Right. How do you know you're not autistic? In order to determine whether or not you're autistic, you have to go get checked out by a doctor, ideally a specialist in autism. It doesn't matter if you feel fine and that there's no problem or anything. And you might think you're socially graceful or whatever. But you know what? You're not a doctor. How are you going to know for sure if you're autistic or not unless you go to the autism specialist doctor who does nothing but diagnose people as autistic? It's like same thing with ADHD, right? Take your kid or yourself to the ADHD specialist doctor. Well, lo and behold, you've got ADHD. I specialize in difficult to diagnose ADHD cases. Doctor, in a lot of ways, I'm inconsistent with this description of ADHD. I only really meet one of the criteria. That's fine. You're one of those hidden ADHD cases. Self undiagnosed. Maybe I just have delusions of being neurotypical. Those proud neurotypes walking around with their neurotypical strut and their like normal brain in his house and their social grace and their you know regular attention instead of hyperactive. They think they're so hot, those damn neurotypicals. They still don't know shit about autism, really. Have you never heard the term normies for neurotypicals? I probably have, but it didn't come to mind. I'll use that term going forward. Muggles is fine as well. Normies out there always imposing their standards on the world. Oh, you aren't cool. Come here, you neurodivergent scum. They're always telling me that and stuff. Normie isn't usually referring to neurology. Is it referring to people who aren't in Alcoholics Anonymous? You do hear that in Alcoholics Anonymous. Beer can with an English accent equals bacon in Jamaican. I see. Good to know. I'll keep that in mind. I'll use the information to try to prevent myself from getting lost at sea. My friend, textbook ADHD, couldn't focus in class when we were growing up, but always had a super active mind in terms of technology, philosophy, morality, always creating different meows, I guess. What did you think normies referred to? I thought it referred to neurotypicals. Oh, I get it, Fly Guy. You weren't addressing that question to me. I'm sorry for always playing that game. But now I'm more understanding that we are wired differently, and maybe it's not going to be as feasible for some. Oh, you mean in terms of developing rhythm? My rhythm's not great. I mean, nobody would accuse me of being metronomic. No, Fly Guy. I'm not suggesting you should change. I was suggesting that maybe I should change. This subject is like politics. Everybody has their opinion and beliefs on the subject of autism and whether it's a spectrum or not. I'd point out that most things aren't like that, right? It it makes me think one should err on the side of the skeptics because most things do, in fact, we do have broad agreement about them and what kind of thing they are. Like we understand that nobody has partial Down syndrome. They may have a mild or severe case of it, but we understand that equivalent things for most kinds of diseases like that. Like, and things where something is an example of a more mild or more severe case of something, we're rarely in disagreement about whether those are the same thing or not, if ever, hardly, except for things like ADHD and autism. And with autism, nobody's. I mean, ADHD is not that question is not specific to that ADHD, but with autism, I'm talking about the spectrum part of it. Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. It's easy to imagine the conditions under which the issue would be decided one way or another. You'd have to have determined the specific cause of autism, pinpointed it, be able to test for it in people who are definitely autistic, like the kind of autistic people that are in special ed classes and stuff, and then check to see if given members of the population at large have been diagnosed autistic, also test positive for it. But until we have some kind of test that involves empirical data, then we're not going to be able to really resolve that question. I don't think. But I definitely concede that that I have historically positioned the autism question as though, with the kind of authoritativeness that would suggest I could win the argument. I don't know if I ever expressly made that claim, but I'm quite confident I never did expressly make that claim. My oldest son is level 2 autistic, seeing everyone coming out of the woodwork diagnosed later in life. Yeah, I'm not sure what that level is. It sounds like something maybe came into place after I left that field. Hi, Kitty. Yes, you're an important kitty man with important kitty ways. And everybody knows. I feel like I wasn't in the real one. The real what? Which type do you think would be drawn towards the field of computer science? I think INTP, INTJ maybe, um, possibly ISTP. Might get some ESTJs in there, some ENTJs. You might even get like some types that are less well suited for potentially like INFJs, ENFJs, ESTPs. I mean, I think ESTPs are fine suited for it. I don't know my other comment sent. The context aren't that there are different levels to special classes. Yeah, there are different levels to special classes, but they weren't called like that when I was teaching. There was profound, moderate to severe, and mild to moderate. Can you type someone based on their capabilities and skill set? No, not in the sense of like somebody reporting what their abilities are and skills are to me. I can type them by testing uh, uh, several of the different skills, more than several, but by testing to eliminate certain possible slot placements. And I can get to somebody's type with a process of elimination. A lot of times people want me to speculate about someone's type based on either their what they say in chat or some information they're providing me. But that's just not a good way to type anybody. In general, I try to not make claims about people's type that I can't defend. With an explanation that's consistent with my other explanations. I often have to read something over and over for it to even get to my brain to focus on the task at hand. What is that about? Well, if you're reading something that's boring that you don't want to read, then your mind's just probably wandering, like quite possibly extroverted intuition. I am the champion of debates. Uh, I don't feel like any kind of champion of debates. I don't feel like I've been in a lot of debates, and I wouldn't even imagine what the judging criteria for such things would be. I do feel as though I understand what productive adversarial discourse looks like, and I feel as though I've gotten the most I could out of debate in terms of like I know everything I need to know to make determinations about what's correct, to the extent that that's predicated on argumentational knowledge. Then, well, thanks, Limp Dicks Kid. I appreciate it. Or describe them as being able to see through walls. We're describing who as being able to see through walls. I was going to get typed, I'd need to be in the right state of mind, as on and off, usually later in the day, my brain starts buzzing and it's hard to think. Huh. Maybe you've been infected by an alien parasite. I've been watching this show, Fallen Skies, and that happens to people in Fallen Skies. They get infected by an alien parasite, and then they start hearing this buzzing in their head, and you got to worry about whether they're going to be faithful to the humans who are battling the aliens. Eric will go back to high school and join the high school debate team. He's very excited to be a freshman in high school next year. Boy, that would be quite a rude awakening to wake up tomorrow morning and wake up in my bed in Arcadia and I'm 14. That'd be weird. I wouldn't know what to do about that. Okay, wait. Is that a valid thing? Is it better for a person to be tired while they're being typed? This way they lean on the default function. It doesn't make any difference whether you're tired or not or any of those things. I guess conceivably it might, like if somebody would be super thwacked out, it might be misleading regarding, I guess, extrovert intuition maybe. It is the case, like if you get most people all coked out, then they're gonna talk a lot more, and even though that's not in and of itself an answer to any typing question I might ask, it still would be likely to mislead me somewhat. So I'm not exactly sure whether it would be sufficiently misleading to get me to type them wrong or not. It wouldn't help them game any of the tests, but it would be suggestive of, like, I don't know. I'm human. I might be more likely to type such a person as an extrovert, even if they're an introvert, conceivably. But that would be because I can't do all the work with just the typing questions like I wish I could. I have to use some intuition in some instances. So, you know, that means it's only so much science. And the rest of it, I guess we'll have to call art. Well, I'm getting pretty tired. I'm going to wrap this up and watch a little bit more of that Netflix show. It's not really originally from Netflix, so I'm not sure where it's originally from, but it's called Fallen Skies. Seems pretty old, like maybe 2010 or something. Anyway, I thought I'd watch a little bit more of that and then go to bed. Yeah, I think so, Fly Guy. Feeling pretty worn out. Pretty much like somebody blew their nose into me and wadded me up and threw me in the trash can. I was figuring that when people are bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, they could try displaying weaker functions, but as they fatigue, they default. That's not a bad notion, new group. For sure, that they might have more flexibility regarding their reflexiveness if they're in their peak or something. It's possible. Anyway, see you all later. Love you. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And if you do, eat twice as much tomorrow.